Hi guys, I'm Albert Rosales from Grinders Fitness. I've got two special guests with me today from Throwdown, one of our boxing shows. Today on TAKEdown MMA, we're going to cover a little bit of everything. We're going to kind of have a round table. I'd kind of like to get started today with the Bareknuckle boxing that happened last night. Kind of get your take on it. I know I have my views on it, but I wanted to see where you guys stood on the whole subject. Aurelio, let's go ahead and start with you, and then I'll talk to Steve, and we'll see what you guys got.
Okay, good. You know, it's interesting that the bare knuckles that went on, because it truly is kind of in the middle of boxing and MMA. I mean, as far as the show itself, and I actually had my doubts on whether it would take, and I still have my doubts on the longevity of the sport, you know, because people have tried a lot of different things in the sport. Like take boxing, a few years ago they started that record player thing where you know, it was a round circle and there was no ropes and stuff like that, and they put a lot of money into that venture. They were on TV, they had shows. Well, it fell flat on its face. It didn't work. So I'm thinking this one, they really did have a lot of success on this show, but I think most of the part, and this is just my opinion, is that it was due to the fact that people were interested. They wanted to see the barbaric, and this is really barbaric. Okay, this is no skills type thing. You just go in there like a street fight. You know, no nothing. But it is kind of a little on the verge of dangerous. But I think if I had to guess, I think the popularity will start to drop down, and people are going to get tired. And I think unless they do something, bring some kind of gimmicks to keep it up, because they are spending a lot of money. I think it's going to be like the record player boxing. I think it's going to be like the in football. What was the one that tried to rival?
The XFL. Vince McMahon's group. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're good, interesting to begin with, because people.
You talking about like arena football? Is that what you're
the arena football, and also the USFL.
Yeah.
USFL. You know, and then they do their best, and it's a big money draining venture. So you almost have to make it. So how many times can these guys afford to bring in and put in $500,000 in promotion, and then dude, don't forget their pay-per-view was $29.99, which to me, I thought it was expensive.
It was.
I didn't buy it. I know you bought it because it was intriguing, but I didn't. But that's my take. I don't
Well, Stephen, you purchased the event. What were your initial thoughts on it before you watched it, and then after you watched it?
Well, let me say this. I bought it because, to be honest, this weekend was dead with any boxing events. Okay, there was nothing really to speak of. And I bought it just because our girl Alma Garcia from Denver was competing in it, and I wanted to see how Alma would do. But I did do a little research looking back, and this guy David Feldman, you know, when he said he invested $500,000 into this show, and different than what a radio said, you know, and I think that's a lot of perception. People have no skill, and it's just like, no, all these people had backgrounds in either boxing, UFC, MMA. So they are. That's, I think, the difference, is that there is a skill level.
Right.
Okay. Before, with tough man competition, it was literally a ring in the bar parking lot, and just anybody, you got to sign up and sign a waiver, and you get to fight.
Right.
This is a little different, and I think that's where the $500,000 that he spent on this whole thing. I will have to say this: I thought marketing-wise, he did an excellent job. I mean, an excellent job, because there were people. Even Feldman said that, they said, USA Today said that the arena was sold out, 2,000 people in the arena, not big numbers. But their words, they said they sold tens of thousands of pay-per-views on one of those, okay?
And for the initial show, that's a really good turnout.
That's a great turnout.
In my opinion, to me, this kind of favors the MMA fighters over the boxers just a little bit, because you get to dirty box.
Yeah.
And honestly, MMA fighters are used to fighting with 4-ounce gloves. Okay, so you take a boxer and you take the gloves away from him. That takes away a lot of your defense. You know, I tell my MMA fighters when they're fighting, you know, like if we're sparring with boxing gloves and then we switch it up to MMA gloves, with MMA gloves everything lands. Everything lands. It doesn't matter if you cover, if you keep your hands up, everything's got some kind of impact to it. Whereas with boxing gloves, you get away with just a little bit more because they cover more surface area. So to me, this kind of favors the MMA fighters. And if you look at the card, some of the more popular names on the card were MMA fighters. Joey Beltran, who fought in the UFC. Tony Kryptonite Lopez from California, who's got a ton of MMA
Tony's
fights.
45 years old, ain't he?
Right, and hey, and that guy's still killing it, man. He's doing a great job. I know he trains with a guy who's an excellent MMA coach in California, Colin Oyama. But this guy's been doing it for years. But you have Beck Rawlings, who was just cut from the UFC in April, I believe, April, May, somewhere around there. Johnny Bedford, who fought in the UFC. So a lot of these guys are MMA fighters coming over. I kind of feel like the style fits them a little bit more than it does boxers. So it'll be interesting to see how many of the boxers actually come forward. And
do you think that this win last night from Beck over Alma gets her signed by Invicta?
Well, Beck is a big enough name that she was already going to get signed by Invicta.
Okay.
Like I could definitely see her going to Invicta. Whether she took this fight and won this fight or not, I could see her going there. I think she'll do well there. New weight class of 125.
You think even if she would have lost, she probably would have
gone? Honestly, I think so. She's a big enough draw, and honestly, Invicta needs the viewers. They need the names, you know. And she's coming from the UFC. She's a little bit bigger name than some of the stars that they have going now. So I kind of feel like because it was a different sport, she would have gone there anyway. So. You know, so looking back at it now, I know in the UK they put on a lot of BK events. They put in a lot of Bareknuckle, and it seems to work well there.
Yeah.
You've got a different kind of crowd there, but they do it a lot there. So is this something you see that's got some longevity to it, or do you think it's going to be like Aurelio says, and it's just gonna, you know, it's gonna peak real fast and then?
Well, like I told Aurelio, I think that for the fighters themselves in Bareknuckle, you know, and even just watching last night, okay, 2-3 fights, you know, could probably just about do it for most of them. I mean, Alma took a beating last night, you know, and unlike a beating in boxing, you know, this is like we were talking off air. The rules allow you to grab behind the head and pull them into punches. That's not good for boxers.
Absolutely.
That's not good for a regular straight up boxer. You know, they're not used to that. That's why, like you said, MMA guys have the advantage on that. So I don't know. I think with everything, the newness of it, but the fact that USA Today said that, you know, tens of thousands of pay-per-view, that in itself attracts. That's an antenna that other people are going to say, hey, maybe y'all better check out this next one. You know?
Well, so it's only sanctioned in Wyoming currently. But now, speaking to you as a boxing coach, is this something you would ever let your boxers take part of? Because I know, like, when we were talking off screen a while ago, I had mentioned that I would never let one of my fighters fight in something like this, and Shannon just kind of gave me a look like, what the hell, like, you know. And honestly, to me, like, the long-term damage plus, you know, and even the damage you can do to your hands, to me, isn't something I want to deal with. You know, maybe if your fighter's at the end of their career, maybe. But if you got somebody who's currently fighting a lot, would you let one of your boxers take part in this event?
That's absolutely not. Absolutely not. And what you said is the exact reasons why. Number one, too much damage on both sides of the occasion. Okay, both fighters, regardless if they win or lose, will sustain critical and career-ending damages. Even the guys in boxing, as it is, and you wear the gloves, you know, the smallest 8 ounce up to 10 ounce for the heavyweights, have a lot of hand injuries because actually you're leveraging your punches and you're hitting. The cranium's hard, so you start hitting that, they do damage. So without gloves, you're going to break knuckles, you're going to shatter knuckles, you're going to hurt wrists, you're going to do that. So that career for a fighter is very short. It's going to be very short. So the other thing you touched on is it's probably going to be a league or a place for older retiring boxers, which that's probably all they have is 2 years.
Right.
Because like Steven said, 2 fights and you're probably done. Depending on the fight. So to answer your question, no. Any active, promising fighter that I have in camp, no. And the other ones that are not so promising, no, because they're going to get hurt.
Right.
They're going to get hurt.
Well, it
So,
seems like
yeah.
they really went out and tried to give them, from what I understand, they tried to give them good money. So even having said that, to me, it's not really something like I want to let one of my active fighters take part in. But who am I to hate on somebody for trying to?
Well,
make some
let's
money?
give
You know what I'm saying?
David Feldman some credit. He said that he was going to do everything in his power to make it as safe as possible.
Right.
Okay, and then like I told the radio, I saw where he had two ringside physicians, and they had 2 ambulances. Okay, I mean, to a lot of people, they would say, "Oh, that's no big deal." You and I know that's a big deal.
Right.
Okay, because as in any combat sporting event, you can only do so much as far as safety.
Right.
But I think he did all that he could do.
But what does that tell you about the sport?
It's dangerous.
When you have to have 2 ambulances and 2 doctors.
He's prepared for danger.
What does that tell you, the expectation of the sport and what's going to be?
There's no question.
Well, and let's be honest, like, he went the right path, and he got this sanctioned.
Yes.
Okay, he could have done this on an Indian reservation. He could have done it in a casino Indian reservation, not done with commission, and not had to deal with all that other stuff. He went the right way. He got it sanctioned, and he's trying to do things the right way. So
Well, that's the problem. Where does he go from here?
Well, Wyoming doesn't have a commission. Okay, so
They've got
that's why
combat sports commission.
that's
Right,
why-
right.
They don't have a legal commission. They don't. So that's why they did it in Wyoming. Plus the fact that the guy in Wyoming, Corey Williams, has been doing bare knuckle fighting in bars and clubs for years. So the people in Wyoming, the politicians already were familiar with bare knuckle boxing, so it was easy for him to go to Wyoming.
So what was the difference?
Well, what I'm saying, my point is I'm going to be anxious to see when he tries to go out of Wyoming. When he goes into, I know he can't do them in Colorado. He'll never be able to do them here. I don't think he'll be able to do them in any commission state, which leaves him to try to do them in just maybe 3 or 4 states in the union that don't have a boxing commission or an athletic commission. And even the ones that don't have them outside of Wyoming, I think the politicians are going to be reluctant because their careers are on the line if they go for a dangerous sport like this, and they got to get reelected.
But you know what,
So
Albert? Having said all of that, the bottom line is money. Okay,
Absolutely.
When money comes through, everybody wants to get a piece of that money. Okay?
Well, and so I tend to agree with you and think that maybe it's going to stay in Wyoming a little bit, but let's be honest, okay? People said the same thing about MMA.
Thank you.
Okay, and it took a while to get going, but here we are, 20 years later, we're still going strong and we're still doing our thing. Okay, so
Well, let me tell you something, and it's so true that you say that because I boxed for 10 years before I retired, way back in the days. Okay, we didn't have
That
a
was in the
commission.
1800s.
We didn't have a commission in Colorado when I was fighting, and the one thing I always
Marcus, the
said,
Queensbury rules.
the one thing I've always said is I can do my boxing, but I will never do MMA because them guys are tough as nails, man. And I'll tell you what, if I ever did go into MMA, I'd box, and the minute I got the takedown, my hand would be tapping on the way down. On the way down, because there was no way I was going to let myself get on the ground with an MMA fight. Couldn't survive.
Well, you know what? I agree with Albert.
Yeah.
We talked about that earlier. I said the same thing. I said, but that's what they said about MMA and UFC, that it won't last. It's just a fad. It'll go. If you do things the right way, and I think Feldman, I mean, you'd say right now that he's the initiator of it. I can't see anything that you could actually put your finger on that last night that he did wrong. I mean, everything was on the up and up. The write-ups that I'd seen, there was nothing that said that there was any problems in the crowd.
Right.
I mean, these are all things that you have to take into consideration, like you said, in your inaugural event.
Yeah.
Your inaugural event, man, you got to have all that, and everything went smoothly. The fights, like you said, everybody was more than happy with the fights. The heavyweight fight lasted, 30 seconds? You caught your boy to the right and dropped him, and it's over, and the crowd was wild. They were insane, and that's what the things that are lacking in boxing were right there last night.
I agree.
Okay,
This is a good
other
topic.
than it's just hard to imagine you going straight up with the dude.
Well, if you guys get a chance to watch the Joey Beltran Kryptonite Lopez fight, because from what I understand, that was the fight of the night.
And
that
Lopez
was a
lost.
bloody war. Both men were beat up. Both men were bleeding. And literally, they just stood toe to toe and just beat the living bejesus out of each other. A lot of dirty boxing, a lot of boxing out in the open. While the skill isn't quite what it is, obviously, like in the boxing world,
It's gonna take time.
the amount of punishment these two men took and were able to deliver is outstanding. So in terms of the action value and in terms of like the entertainment value, that is the fight you're going to want to promote if you want to get this going somewhere else. Or you could, if you're one of the naysayers, maybe that's the fight you look at and be like, that's why this sport shouldn't be allowed. Like, it's too bloody, it's too violent.
Like you said, that's what they said about UFC and
Exactly.
and
Let's
MMA.
continue this on the next segment because this is a good topic.
We're already into the next segment. How long are we gonna go?
Well, we just want to give the guys a break.
Give them a break.
Give them a break and come back.
So we'll be back shortly. Catch us on IBTV or ibtv.us or Roku. Okay, we'll be back for the next segment on Takedown MMA. I'm Albert Rosales, Aurelio, Stephen. Okay, we'll see you in a couple.